Okay, Erev Tov, everyone. Happy to be back. It's so we've all, what's that? What's to eat? What's to eat? Yeah, so we've all still got fruit on the brain. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about brachot, about the order of brachot. That's one of the main halachot of Tu B'Shvat. Right? We spoke about it a little bit earlier this afternoon. The truth is we don't that often have a chance to exercise this bracha because very often when we sit for a big meal, so we start off with bread. So once you're starting with bread, you say the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and you don't really need to say the rest of the brachot, usually speaking. Even there, as I mentioned earlier, there's a bit of confusion maybe in our minds because on Shabbat we always start off with Kiddush. So we say Brei Pregafen first, and then we say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's actually the wrong order. Right? On Shabbat it's the right order because we have to do Kiddush. But that's one of the reasons why we cover the bread and we say Kiddush. Right, and we know the people say so the bread doesn't get embarrassed, right? What does that mean? The bread's not going to get embarrassed. The point is there's an order of brachot. By right, we should have been saying the bracha on the bread first, but because we're not, therefore we cover it up. That's why there are those who have the practice as well that when you're at a kiddush, so the truth is the order is we have hamotzi and then mezonot and only then hagefen. So if you're at a kiddush and you have mezonot in front of you by rights, if the reason is because of the brachot, so the mezonot should also be covered up at the time when you say kiddush, and there are those who have that practice. In any event, so the question comes up in terms of which bracha do we say first? First of all, when we have different brachot to say, right? Which of the brachot? Then there is a question of if I have different foods with the same bracha, I'm not going to say the same bracha twice, but over which should I eat first? Over which fruit should I say the bracha? And then when it comes to fruits specifically, there's a different question in terms of which fruit we say the bracha first. So again, as we've been doing the last few days, using the Pnei Halacha as a basis for this discussion, and he says as follows. So first of all, Seder Kedima b'brachot hashonot. When I have a number of different brachot to say at a meal, it says sheyesh lifnei adam kama ma'achalim shebilkoteim shonot. Right, I have a number of different foods. We have a different bracha. We're talking about bracha rishonah, the bracha before you. Bracha after you, it has its own rules as well. Nachon la'ader u'levarech aleim lefi seder chashivut she'amru chachamim. Right, it's the correct thing to say them in a specific order. Shekshem she'adam omed ledaber lifnei sar chashuv. He says if a person was going to speak in front of the king, in front of an important minister, so mitachnen hetev et dvarav, you would plan out what it is that you're going to say. B'mei yiftach or b'mei yamshech. People spend a long time thinking about, they have an important meeting, somebody to talk about. What is my opening line going to be, right? And what am I going to continue? Same thing. You are standing, you're about to say the brachot before the King of Kings. So it's proper to do it in the right order. So So we have two fundamental rules when it comes to the order of brachot. Okay, and we'll see what happens when the rules clash with one another, which often can happen. But the first is, the principle is that the more significant food, that is the one that gets its bracha first. So we should first say a more specific bracha. Right? The way it works, the different brachot, we'll leave hamotzi lechem min haaretz out of this discussion, because when you say hamotzi, you aren't going to say the rest of the brachot, because that covers all the food you're going to eat along with the bread. But we have more specific brachot and more general brachot. Now we know b'diavad, right? If a person didn't know, or if there was a mistake, or whatever it is, b'diavad, if I said a more general bracha on a food which requires a more specific bracha, I have fulfilled the obligation. So if I say shehakol means everything. If I say shehakol on anything, I fulfill the obligation. However, it's more proper to say the specific bracha for the food. So we start off with the more specific bracha, and then we move our way back to the more general bracha. So the klal that Chazal gave us, is Roshei Tevot. It's an acronym in order to remember, which is Maga Esh, right? The touch of fire. But Maga Esh, each of those letters stands for Mem is mezonot, Gimel is a gefen, Brei Pregafen, Ayin is eitz, Aleph Adama, and Shin Shakol. So that is the order of brachot. We start going from mezonot all the way to Shakol, and Maga Esh is an easy way to remember that. There is discussion between eitz and Adama, because both of those are brachot about fruit, right? So again, the halachic definitions There's a lot we could talk about between fruits and vegetables, but the halachic definitions of fruits is not the same as the botanical definitions necessarily. But there are Rishonim who say that eitz and adama are interchangeable. We'll get there. Yeah. So it's more chashuv. Yeah, so we would say, that's why I say it's confusing, because on Shabbat we used to saying hagefen first when we have a kiddush. But if it was not for the fact of kiddush, we would say mezonot first, and only then we'd say brei hagefen. That's why the surah that we had earlier today, that's the way, that was the order that we went in. Okay, so he says bilkat mezonot chashuva mishal habrachot. Mezonot is the most significant of the brachot. Mipnei shema'achalei mezonot hem hamasbi'im bayoter. Okay, the explanation, for Barav Melamed is that mezonot, those are foods which are the most satisfying, the grains which fill you up, and therefore that is the one we begin with. And he says, "Lachen beit hakidush machasim et hachalav v'mezonot shelo yekem makdim et hayayin lelechem u'lemezonot." Right, precisely for that reason, we cover up the mezonot or the lechem when we say kiddush first. So we begin with that. Lachal miken birkat hayayin chashuva. Right, the bracha on wine is the next significant. Wine is, of course, the only drink, and grape juice is considered wine for this purpose. The only drink which has its own bracha. All other juices we'd say shakol. Next come the brachot of fruit, ha'etz ve'adama, which come before shakol. All right, because these are more specific. Right, eitz and adama are specific for fruits, and shakol is for every other food. All the other foods do not have their own specific bracha. We know as well that if a person was meant to say ha'etz over a certain food, and you said ha'adama, again, you fulfilled your obligation, because ultimately trees come from the ground. If you said it the other way around, if you said ha'etz and it should have been ha'adama, that is no good. You have to go back and say the bracha again. Okay, so as we said, he said betoch bekata perot, regarding fruits themselves. Bekata etz kodemet lebekata adama. The bracha of etz comes before adama, right? Because of the exact reason we just explained. אומנם לגבי ברכת הפירות יש עוד כללים שיש להעדיף את החביב ואת פירות שבעת המינים. Okay, so we'll get to that shortly. But when it comes to fruits specifically, there are other rules here that we go by, that which may be the one which you like more, or the one which is in Shivat HaMinim. So we'll see. So now he says as follows: Sidrei הקדימה בין הברכות הם בתנאי ששני מיני המאכלים מונחים לפניו ורוצה לאכול עתה את שניהם. Okay, all this we're talking about is where you have the two foods that are in front of you right now, and you plan on eating both of them. Right? Sometimes this happens if you, for example, a person goes to a restaurant or whatever, so they serve the drinks first, and only later the food comes. Do I have to wait for the food before having the drink? No. So we're talking about the priority when I have all the food in front of me at once. If I only have one and later I'm going to get the other one, then that would not apply. So for example, okay, I gave an example of a restaurant. He gives an example, you're sitting at home, but you have one food in front of you, the other one's in the cupboard. So right now I have fruit in front of me, and only later on I'm going to go and bring the grains, whatever it is. So then I can say the bracha on the food that's in front of me now, and afterwards when I get the other food I can say their bracha. Okay, so that is in terms of priority when I have foods with different brachot. What about when I have foods with the same brachot? Okay, now again, here the question would not be which bracha do you take first, because you're only saying one bracha. The question is, but which food would you take and say the bracha on? Obviously, all the foods that are of the same bracha are going to be covered, but which one is it proper to hold up and say the bracha? So he says, I want to eat a number of foods which all have the same bracha. It's proper that we should say the bracha on the more significant food. It's fitting that the bracha should be said on the more significant food, and that way tiftor and exempt all the other foods. So how do we define what is more significant? So three rules in terms of what's got more chashivut. Number one, we'd say if I have one food which is whole and another food which has been sliced up, okay, so I should say the bracha on that which is whole. Lefichach I have two biscuits or cookies if you're American in front of me, right? And the one is whole and the one is broken, right? Broken in half. So I take the whole one and say the bracha. Same thing if I have a matzot, or if I have a loaf of bread, if I have a whole loaf versus a loaf which has already been cut. So I'll take the whole loaf, right? Cut it before I eat. So now that's number one in terms of whole versus cut or broken. Number two, we say hachaviv kodem. That which is more chaviv, meaning that one which you like more. There's two fruits in front of me. I intend on eating them both, okay? But I've got, I don't know, an apple and an orange, and I really, really like apples, and I like oranges a little bit. So then I should take the apple and say the bracha on that. Is somebody else who really likes oranges and really likes apples a little bit, so he should take the orange, okay? But that's chaviv. And the third rule is hagadol kodem lekatan. You have a large piece and you have a small piece. It's more kavod for the bracha to say on the large piece versus on the small piece. So number one, that which is whole. Number two, that which is chaviv, that which is preferable to me. And number three, that which is larger versus that which is small. So too, b'minei basar v'dagim, a piece of meat or fish or different types, which are all the bracha of she'akol. We go by first that which is whole, then that which you like more, and then that which is bigger. So he says, what happens when I have a clash between the different principles? So that's the order. Number one, I go by that which is whole, even if it's one which I like less. Number two, I go with that which I like more, even if it's smaller than the other piece which is bigger. Okay, so that is in terms of the same bracha. Now, when it comes to fruit specifically, fruit's got all of its own rules for a couple of reasons, as follows. We know there are the 7 species by which Eretz Yisrael is praised. Chita, Selah, Gefen, Teinav, Limon, Eretz, Zeit, Shemen, Udvash. Now, of the 7 species, the first two, Chita and Selah, are going to be either lechem or mezonot. But when it comes to fruit, so we have 5 to choose from. He says, since these were singled out by the Torah in terms of praise of Eretz Yisrael, if a person is going to eat different types of fruits, I should take first from the pre of Eretz Yisrael. So where does this come up? Can come up anytime you're eating fruits, but it comes up on Rosh Hashanah night, right? When we have the simanim of Rosh Hashanah, and there we would say the bracha of Borei Pre'a'etz, because you don't normally eat fruit as part of the meals. Even though I've said Hamotzi, I'll still say Borei Pre'a'etz. So you have dates and pomegranates, which are part of the Shiva Minim, and you have apples and other fruits which are not part of the Shiva Minim. So really, you should take the fruit which is part of the Shiva Minim, and you should say the bracha on that first. That's why you should start off with the dates. Why do some people nonetheless start off with the apple? So the reason for that is as follows. We actually have a machloket in the Mishnah, right? We said that one of the ways we define which is more significant is that which is chaviv, that which I like more. So what happens if I have 2 fruits in front of me, and one of them is a fruit from the Shivat Aminim, like dates and pomegranates, but I really, really, really like apples, right? Which is not from the Shiva Minim, but that is more chaviv. Do I go here by chaviv, or do I go by the Shivat Aminim? So that is a machloket in the Mishnah. It is also a machloket in the Rishonim. Ladata Rambam, mutav shevarech al pri chaviv alav. The Rambam says you should say, in such a case, you should say the bracha on the apple. The other Rishonim, most of the other Rishonim say, no, you should, that's what the Shulchan Aruch says as well. He says that you should go by the fruit which is part of the Shivat Aminim, but nonetheless, if one decides to go b'di'evet, certainly, if one said whichever one you said the bracha on, that's applied. You don't have to go back and say the bracha again, but that is maybe where that machloket comes from. One other point, which is if you have a number of the minim of Eretz Yisrael, so we go by whichever one is closer to the word Eretz. But the word Eretz is mentioned twice in the pasuk, right? So the closest to the word Eretz are actually the ones which come. The second Eretz is Eretz Zeit Shemen Udvash, so Zeitim, which is olives, and then Dvash, which relates to dates, so olives and then dates. And then we go back to the first Eretz, which said Chita, Sorah, and then Gefen, Teina, Rimon. So that's the order: olives, dates, grapes, figs, and then pomegranates, and then whichever one is chaviv more, that is the order of the brachot that you would say before eating the fruit. Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha Omer Tzakadosh Baruch Hu Zakot Yisrael Lefichach Ba'alem Torah Mitzvot Shnei Ma'adanech Vetzman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.